All right, we've got 5 o'clock. Welcome everybody to my first AMA. I've got Otto here. Our mod is going to be helping out. My Discord experience is mostly on the listening side, so he's going to walk me through if I need to do anything as we get to the later part of this session where we take questions. So the first part was us asking everyone to submit questions, and I would attack that list first, get through that pile, and then at the end, we'll let everybody come up and see if they have any questions they have. So far, I've got about 31 people that have submitted questions, 1 or 2 questions each. Some of them got up to about 10 questions each. So my plan is take maybe the first half hour, walk through these questions, and then, like I said, turn it up to the floor for any further detail. So of these questions, I broke them into categories. And I think what I'll do is sort of focus on questions that revolve around PCC prior to me buying the assets. Then we'll move into more corporate structure, what Nest activity is, and then future questions. Okay, Otto, I'm going to start off now. You good with that?
Yeah, just before you start off too, I just want to say we are recording this for anybody, so if you have to drop off early, anybody, we will get a recording up somewhere. It might not be the old YouTube channel repository, but we'll figure out a way to put a recording out there somehow.
Okay, thanks, Otto. All right, let's kick it off here. First question, and again, this is me going through the list, looking for questions that had sort of the prior to me buying the assets being involved. So that's what I'm going to focus on here for the first several set of questions. So the first question I thought was the most appropriate to start, which should be, what brought about the sale of Phoenix to Dan? What are your intentions for us? Many have invested tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we rightly expect some return retaining to the original promise made on incubators. Now, many of them look like Combat Waffle are launching their own products. So for me, I guess let's start back to where I started buying Nests in February. So I bought the Fire token, converted that to a Nest, and then buying the Nests, I knew my reward in Fire was what I was getting. At some point in the future, it was going to convert over to some type of venture capital where I'd be getting profits from future investments. That's what I bought into in the beginning. So during that process, I was trying to volunteer, reaching out to Matting, got lucky enough to connect with him, meet him in his hometown, got more excited about what the future was looking like, and then eventually was able to connect with Marcus on getting a little bit of the inside information, sort of trying to be like a consultant on the outside for him on the finance side. And then ultimately, when I got involved, I realized that the Nests had no legal tie to the PCC company. So, and that's when Marcus was starting to make his rounds. He talked about everything being a mess, which, we were all participating in that, understanding what was going on. So ultimately what happened was I did not see a sustainable model when I was supporting Marcus. And on top of that, the sentiment was pretty bad. The dollars that we had in the treasury were not very large to really grow this thing. So I got to the point where the best path forward, I thought, was maybe I should just buy these assets that I think are high value and figure out a way to put this thing in hibernation and just wait and try to help these investments get to the next level where they're generating cash, or maybe they're doing a Series A round and more cash comes in, that type of thing. So I approached Luke and Eric with that and said, I think this is the best path. And ultimately, after some time, they agreed. So that's how we got that transaction taken care of. So when I get into the Nest stuff, I'll do that a little bit later as I get into corporate structure and Nest. So I'm going to push that question off to a little bit later. Next question was concerning Spectrum. The question was, Dan did not want it, or because Luke decided to keep it as part of the contract. Ultimately, when I pitched what I was interested in, it did not include Spectrum because That just wasn't something I was interested in. The NFT market space there's quite a few players in there today, and that just didn't interest me as a future investment that I wanted to put time into. Next question. So another thing, I'm going to try to hit these questions sort of quick, get my quick answer and not get super detailed. And then at the end of this, anybody has any questions that they want to go deeper in, feel free to get on stage and ask that question for more details. Okay, next question concerning future investments. What happened to the R2 deals that were in the works prior to you buying the assets? So before I made my proposal, I was only aware of one potential future investment, and that was in some type of fitness healthcare play in the UK. I didn't get any financials. There was talk about a meeting. It never materialized for me. So that's all I know on that one. Next question would be concerning Eric's Thailand investments. Can Eric work with Dan and perhaps have a Thai update channel? People will have questions and it would be wrong for them not to be answered. So again, back to the Thailand investment. I knew Eric was over there. He was working on something with hotels and whatnot that he had mentioned in multiple Discord comments. That just wasn't part of what I was wanting to focus on. So on the assets I was interested in, that just wasn't one of them. And so as far as that getting updated on the channel here, I guess I'd be open to him giving that information and posting it here. It's just not part of what I'm working on. Okay, next question on prior stuff concerning Casper. Can you explain why Casper was on payroll until October 7th? So all I know about Casper was he was a developer, or she, I don't know that. I've never spoken with this person, and they were part of the development team from early on with PCC. I was not involved with any of the deliverables, nor was I in control of any of the payroll. So it's like, even on the payroll data, I did see there was no line item that said Casper. So it wasn't something I was paying attention to. So again, going back to when I was involved with Marcus, it was really on the windshield of where are we going? How are we going to generate revenue? What's going to be the new tokenomics model, that type of stuff. So it was very little on anything in the rearview mirror, which included Casper. So those were all of the questions on sort of prior to my acquisition. Now we'll move into this sort of next set of questions, which is corporate structure, nests, present type stuff. First question I have there would be concerning obligations to nest holders. When you took over the various assets, was there a legal responsibility passed to you in regard to the nest holders and past agreements they had with PCC? Well, the short answer is no. My company purchased some of the assets through what is known as an asset sale from the company formerly known as PCC. So I say formerly known as because one of the assets I wanted to acquire was the naming rights. So PCC was a Delaware company in the United States. And one of the things that I talked to Eric and Luke about was, hey, I'd like to buy this name too. They agreed. So all I did in an asset sale was buy assets. So any obligation, any debts that PCC had as a company remain with that company. Now, that's not why we're having this conversation today with an AMA. It's just that was the legal transaction. Okay, the next question. Please take this for what it is, a question. I don't know how much you paid, but now you own round 2 treasury, rewards pool, all liquidity. That's already about $942,000 plus any swapsicle profits, shares of 3 remaining partners and contracts. From an investor's perspective, that's probably pretty sweet. But what's your motivation to pay us anything? Am I missing something? Are you making a commitment to us? So my company acquired assets of about $595,000 of treasury and about $100,000 of maintenance the day we closed. The liquidity you mentioned is an interesting thing because this is where I had to get into the weeds after sale on how this works. So the bulk of the liquidity is tied to a null address, so no person controls it. I do have some of the liquidity that I control, and I think the total might be 28,000 fire tokens, which let's call that today $6,000. And then there's another chunk of liquidity that is owned by, I guess, Luke and Eric, old PCC, that did not transfer over. So this was also one of the reasons I paused the contract, because I have to understand how the liquidity works before we would even consider rolling out a token. After that, since the acquisition date, I've signed the agreement with Swapsicle and just signed the one with Combat. Game is very close. I'm going back and forth with Shake now with the legal documents, and Billy's a little bit behind that. I was supposed to meet with them a little over a week ago, but Murray had an illness, so we kicked the can until we can talk again. So hopefully we can do that very soon. So in short, my company has no liabilities to nest holders. However, my goal is to grow the assets that I have under managed to a point where I can invest ultimately into a private equity level where we get a coupon and we get an investment return. That coupon, and again, some of you might not know these terms, but in my world, you go from VC, private equity, and you scale up your investment. So once you get a sizable investment into a, let's say, a going concern company, or it's sending off profit, that would be the coupon. That's the type of coupon that we could then say, okay, a portion of that we can drop, another portion of that we would keep in for operations. Yet you'd still have your equity play to grow that and exit at some point. Most of these investments, well, all these investments are really at the startup phase. So even then, if they throw off cash, it's my experience that they're going to want to use that cash to grow their company versus send all their cash out to an investor. And that's the conversations I'm having with hopefully Murray, but definitely I'm having that with Scott and Shake. Okay, next question regarding sort of corporate structure and nests concerning ownership. Okay, so this one is regarding ownership of the PC. So Dan's still not the owner, just got shares in certain assets per Eric. So that is correct. So PCC, the old named PCC, still exists, and it is owned by Eric and Luke. What they plan to do with that and the assets that are over there, not my concern, right? I don't know that. I purchased certain assets into my company, and I own that company fully. Okay, next question. Okay, so this one is sort of similar to this. Is it possible to confirm that you now make the final decisions and not Luke and Eric, please? As we have no legal rights to anything now, if you are intending to produce a viable business and intend to include the community, will you put something in writing, please? Are there any realistic time goals going forward and any projected start date of any returns? Do you have any thoughts about some of the willing and skilled business people in the community forming a consulting group? Thank you for your time. So, yes, I make the final decisions for my company. Luke and Eric still make their decisions for the formerly known PCC company. Putting things in writing, and this is where it gets into the legal side, right? I have no obligation to the nest holders, but all along, I've said that's not my plan. It's to figure out a way to grow this thing, to get it to a sizable company to where we can actually have a discussion about this thing is generating profits enough to return to, let's say, nest holders. Whether they're called a nest holder in the future, right? I still got to figure that out. But that's the idea. Today, there's just not enough assets, right? We've invested, call it $2.5 million into startups. So it's going to take a while for that to actually get up to something. And I think where that goes, it will be some of the future questions. I want to answer that there. I just wanted to talk about corporate structure at this stage. Okay, another question regarding nests. Will we have a new sustainable nest system to replace our current system? For example, if each nest could bring in one USD net, that would make me happy. So regarding nests, tokenomics, fire token. So for all this, there's a few of these questions I'm just going to sort of answer right here. I paused the smart contract I didn't trust the smart contract, right? Because I didn't review it. 2, the rewards model was not sustainable. And 3, the way it was designed, the majority of the tokens were going to other nest holders. So ultimately, I couldn't, it's not an efficient mechanism to put into investments. So I paused it. So that's where the nests are. The FIRE token, same thing. It still exists, it trades. There is a liquidity out there. So people who have the FIRE can sell it or buy it and do whatever you want to do with it. I've just paused the smart contract for now. All right, what else here? Sorry, I'm just reading through the spreadsheet of all these questions. Okay. Okay, I think that really does it for nests and corporate structure. All of the rest of the questions are really tied to where are we going? So I think what I'll do is start with, let's see here. Let's start with the very first one on sort of the future that was mentioned earlier. And this would be, are you still looking at putting money into startups, or is your main focus the current projects and offering any support? So the answer is both. So a little my background, and some of you know this because we've done DMs back and forth, but my background was first engineering, then business. Run my own company for 20 some years. I've been involved with multiple startups, raised capital, contracts, legal, all the boring stuff, which is why I like crypto. It's something different for me to play with. So this is what I bring to these incubators, these startup companies. So yes, I've met with Scott, I've talked to Murray, I've had multiple conversations with Shay on where they want to go. How can I help them do that? It's generally my experience that all these guys are all, they're CEOs, they've got a plan, but plans always change. So the dollars and cents that I still have in the treasury, I am under the assumption that the majority of those I'm earmarking to help these guys get to the finish line. So even though I'm looking for other things to do, my primary purpose would be making sure I'm supporting the 3 investments that I've got. And then obviously Swapsicle is a little different given it's an exchange already, and we're getting sort of a marketing agreement where we get some returns off of that. But beyond that, I've got a couple of the things I'm looking at. It's just I can't make them significant dollars given we have $595,000 in the treasury. I don't want to spend $500,000 on a new investment. And then tomorrow somebody calls and says, man, I'm so close, we need $300,000. So that's how I'm sort of at least today setting up for, let's say, the next 10 to 14 months. Okay, let's see here. Next question. Is there a possibility of a Zeta partnership? Short answer is maybe. I met with them several weeks ago, and the ball is in their court to provide data to me to prove their risk model. So given I already have 3 investments, right, into startup companies, so by definition, you have high risk plays. The last thing I want to do is go put money into another high risk play that I don't completely understand. So when we left the meeting, they were going to get that information to me. I haven't seen it yet. So once I get that, I can evaluate and let the community know. Okay, next question on future stuff. Have Combat Waffle, Billy, and Game Ray shares been transferred? I think I mentioned a little bit of this a minute ago. Combat, yes, and I made an announcement. Swapsicle, yes, I made an announcement. Game is in process. I reviewed the legal documents last week with Shake. I made some comments actually this morning. Him and I went back and forth. We're having a call tomorrow. I don't think it's going to take another week, but it's within days. And Billy, I'm still waiting to see some of that. The last time I talked to Murray, which is probably maybe 2 weeks ago, he was going to have one of his partners draft up the document and get it over for me to review. And him and I just haven't connected since then. Hopefully that's in the works. Next question, is there any news on Gamery? Yes. So mentioned, I've talked to Shake several times. Where he is at is we're planning to launch his let's call it his first round of the meta, which is really imagine the sort of the Google Maps approach to buying your property, but each properties are sort of predefined, fully detailed architecturally, and you buy that as an NFT. The next round would be a full meta where you could immerse yourself. But to do that, we've got to do a capital raise next year. We're looking to do about a $15 million cap raise on a $100 million valuation first half of next year. So I've got projections from him. We're working through that. My goal is sort of I'm going to run point on his capital raise for him. That way he can stay focused on his product and go from there. So I've got meetings next week here in the States with some VC firms, as well as listening to some pitch decks to sort of craft our presentation to the marketplace. And we've got, the goal is the next 3 or 4 months, work on our pitch deck, and then sort of by the end of first quarter, start going out and shopping. So anyway, very excited with what Shake's working on. Next thing on future. Dan, will you be doxing, and when will that happen? It's a good question. Today it doesn't do me any good to dox, because I don't really want anything from the community. It's like if I get it in the old days when you're asking for money and you're doing a token, you want everybody to know who you are so that you post your name and all that stuff. Today, for the next, call it 6 to 9 months, it's really just me helping the current investments get to their next level. And at some point, once we get past that and we turn this thing into where it's generating cash and we start to get the community more involved, well, then it would make a lot more sense. Just today, it seems to be, I'm just going to focus on helping these guys get to the next level. And at some point, I'm definitely going to have to do that. Next question. When is the weekly update? What is the future of this project? Why is there no news on Spectrum? It was supposed to be the engine of PCC that would drive growth and improve nest holders' returns. Okay, weekly updates. Given today's format, it's just not necessarily. Even monthly is probably not really needed. In my world, the operators and sort of, let's say, my officers, shareholders, that type of stuff, we do monthly financials. And then for, let's say, outside investors, we do quarterly stuff. So I would say it'd be no less than some type of quarterly update on how everything is rolling. Like I said, I've got financial projections on game. I've got financial projections from Combat. I do not have them from Billy. I've requested them a couple times. I still don't have them. Hopefully we get those soon. And then ideally, this would be that sort of quarterly update where here's the status, everybody's doing, and roll that out. I can't see it needing to be more than quarterly today, but ultimately, if we get this thing big enough, it could easily be monthly. So we'll just leave it open for now. Next question on future. Where do you possibly see things in 1 year? That's a crystal ball. So, here's I'll give you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Swapsicle at volumes greater than where they launched. Because where they launched, I think the checks were a few $1,000s. I think last month the volume was down to the point where the check was only a few $100. So at a few $1,000s, that's great because it, sort of pays some of the bills here for the lawyers and my accountant and keeping a part-time dev on and auto as well. But if that could get to some significant dollars, well, then now we could start to talk about partitioning a portion of that off and sending it out as a drop. But for a $3,000 drop over more than 100,000 nests, I think the cost to send it out is more than what everybody would even get. So it makes no sense to me. So Swapsicle, and I've talked to Lee many times as well. The goal another thing would be to work more with Swapsicle where we could benefit the community, and maybe Swapsicle could actually help benefit some of these investments that we've done as well. So that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to see happen. Let's move over to the next one. Combat. They should have a successful launch in March. I know I just met with Scott a couple weeks ago. He's got his launch party, I think, in March as well. We're going to participate, or I'm going to participate in that and help sponsoring that. I'm going to probably be going to that. I'd love to have him a successful launch, and he's off to his other games. And then the real cool thing would be debating how much money he could send off to me versus how much he has to keep in to grow for the next level. Because ultimately, Scott wants to be a full-blown gaming studio. That takes a bunch of cash. But he's getting value. The company's growing. And now it just comes, does it make more sense to throw some cash off today, or does it make sense to hire more developers and keep going? That's the stuff. Game Race, same thing. We should have a successful launch for theirs, and we should be heavy into his phase 2 after a successful Series A, which we want to do next summer. I mentioned that earlier. Billy, I don't know. And this is back to I don't have the projections, and once I get that and we have that meeting, he's just behind the other two guys. We'll get it figured out at some point here in the future, and then I can give you a better answer of where I think Murray and Billy's going to go. Next question. Will we ever see our money back, and who is this Dan guy? Well, for us to get our money back, and I'll get into this a little while, there's a few more questions here where I get into that. So I think it's possible. It's just going to take a while, and we have to understand the amount of dollars we have to generate. And who is this Dan guy? Yeah, good question. I'm the old guy that likes the boring stuff on crypto. That's what. Okay, next question. My understanding is the nests have to be sold in order for us to write the loss off on our taxes. Is this something you can facilitate, or how will our nests benefit us in the future? So nests are paused, whether it's a nest or we call it something else in the future, I don't know yet. But yeah, I think you're correct that I'll use a simple example, right? If you bought a share of Microsoft for $200 and it went to 20 cents, you can't write that off in the United States unless you sell it. And then that's a closed transaction. Therefore, you can get that. Now, I'm not a tax guru, but I spend a lot of time with accountants. So the only way we could do that is to give a mechanism to somebody to let them sell it. And ultimately, I think this is where I get to where here's what I'm going to do, right? We're going to build this company up. We're going to figure out some way to get dollars out to the members, the community members, the nest holders, but it can't be a nest. So, and at the same time, if you don't like what I want to do, I got to give you a way to get off. And I think the easiest way to do that is something that was mentioned early on, is convert this over to NFTs. And then you can either stay or you can sell your NFT. And then any future drops, if we do them, would go with that NFT. And then how we do that and the mechanism, all that stuff I'm working through. Swapsicle's helping me out a little bit. Brian, our dev, is helping me figure that stuff out. But that's the play I have today to give folks the ability to at least exit this position and get the write-off if you want it, and it's a loss. Next question. Can we have an update on the, I just answered that, sorry. Okay, so all right. This guy wins the prize. He had, AK Trader had 12 questions in one question. So I went through this. A few of these I've already answered, so bear with me here as I work through these. First question, rebranding of PCC is necessary due to bad leadership from past. Do you have any plans on rebranding? No, I actually like the Phoenix rebrand. First, it's the best logo if you're going to come back. And two, I don't want to spend any money on branding and coming up with a new logo and all that. I'd rather not spend any money on it when honestly the Phoenix is the best one if we're going to try to make this work. The second question, is there a chance for ROI? For those who are in the hole, what is the realistic time frame? And when do we get our next airdrop? Okay, so yes, like I mentioned, I think there is a shot for ROI. It's going to take many years. Best case is we do some type of drop next year based on these three investments, knocking it out of the park, having some excess cash to the point where it makes sense to do a distribution. That's really what it would be, right? Off to an equity position, which would be me, and then I would then gift that out as a drop. But that has to make sense, because if it comes down to Scott saying, for example, man, I need to hire 3 more devs to get this game out on time versus sending out money, those are the kind of meetings we're going to have.
Okay, next question he had in here. Other than these 4 incubators, are there plans for any revenue growth for the future? And I mentioned that earlier. Yes, I'm looking at one seriously now, but it's a small investment and it's an Octane. But again, it's another startup. Just because, and this gets into calculating of an ROI that I'll talk about later. Investing in something that's already making money, that's an established company, is not going to have a big return. It's going to have an okay return, but it's not going to have a great return that fixes the hole we're in. So that's sort of the lens I have to look at. All right, here, I'll bump on to the next one. Next question he had here. Some of us may be willing to invest more, albeit only to get ROI on the original investment. And then how would you bring in new money as these investments? Okay. Let's see here. I considered this early on as because if we take in more money from, let's say, the nest holders, and it went straight into Treasury, for example, then you could significantly change the multiple required for ROI. So let me look. In reality, if you think about this, so of all the money that was spent on the negative wallets, and I think that's probably pushing $86 million, only 2.3 of it sits in an invested entity today that I just acquired. So that requires a 32x multiple. That is an enormous number to try to capture, 32 times your money. That requires years and lots of successes built on successes. But hypothetically, if everybody said, all right, fine, we'll go 10% more in. So the 86 million would now jump up to, call it in the mid 90s. So now you would have investable assets, cash on hand of, let's say, over 10 million. Well, the 80-some only went to 90-some. So you're talking to like a 9.5 times return. In the world of venture capital, private equity, you're in the range. It's a big one, but you're in the range. So the concerns I have with even attempting to do that would be, what does that structure look like? How do I get all of those funds into something that I could invest? And then number 2, is this even something I want to tackle today? And that, it's just a hypothetical today. It's just, at some point I could see this being more of a full-time job for me, but today this isn't what I do for a living, right? I run companies. This is a sort of a side investment now that's going to take a little more time. It sounds fun. I'm interested in doing this. I think our community got hammered, and I think I can help try to get some of this money back, but it's just going to take a while. So I guess that's the answer to folks who might want to put in more money today. That's great. I'm just not sure I want to do that today. We need to get some success under our belt before we talk about doing something like that. Okay, here, next question regarding Casper. How do you ensure such incidents in the past do not happen in the future? Well, that's a good question. I mean, if I owned a smart contract and put it out into the wild, I would spend a lot of time myself reviewing the code, and I would outsource it to devs I've known for over 20 years that write code for me now. So, and they're not in this world at all. This is code in our world of, let's say, off-chain type code. So I'd spend a lot of time vetting it, given what I've seen in the crypto space of some folks getting taken advantage of. So I would be extremely diligent on anything we would roll out in the future if we did. Okay, his last question would be, as you mentioned, your initial analysis of about 1,000 wallets in positive ROI and 87% of the wallets negative. Do you intend to stop profit getting shared with the first group until the second group gets ROI? So yeah, and I've had this conversation with a few folks as well. We have, let's say, roughly 8,400 wallets in total. About 1,000 of them are positive ROI. With some of these wallets, well over $1 million, down to, let's say, the lowest guy and positive ROI got $1 out more than he put in. So congrats to him. That totals about 57 million bucks. The 7,400 negative wallets range from negative $221,000 plus or minus to somebody who's just $1 underwater. And that totals about that 86 million bucks. So now, obviously, in my mind, the negative 86 is way more important than the positive 57. So any money out, I would want to go to the negative 86 million first. But now the devil's in the details, because there's 7,400 wallets. You know, the person that's the most underwater in magnitude is not the most underwater on ROI percentage. So in other words, there's a lot of wallets that are negative 100%, which means they paid, even though they compounded, right? That's still, they never took $1 out and they paid their fees. So they're negative 100%. But that person could be, and even in that world of negative 100%, for example, there could be, and I've looked at all of these wallets. There's people that are down, let's say $7,000, just as much as there's people down $157,000 at negative 100%. So I'm going to probably figure out a way to segment that to where it's not just $1 across the board. I'll pick, let's say, pain points that are the most painful first, and then work my way through it. So maybe the negative 100% would be the first bucket I attack. And then as that bucket becomes a negative 95, it picks up more and we work our way through. It's something like that. I don't have it all crafted today. We're a long way away from doing it anyway, but just so you all understand, that's at least where my mind's at today. Okay, that is it with his questions. I got a couple more here. Any thoughts on investing in other crypto project coins like XRP and just hold? I'd say my answer is mostly no, because it's an inefficient mechanism. So if I buy, and let's use this person's example of XRP. Fine, I go buy XRP tomorrow and somebody wants to sell it. You're more efficient to do it with your money because you can buy and sell when you want, and off we go. Now, with some of the dollars I currently have, maybe. And this is where, you know, years from now, if we have excess dollars, do I gift them out or do I go put them in a coin? I would rather put the money in the community's hands than go buy a coin. Any thoughts on DAG nodes for the community? I'm not looking into anything with the word node on it. I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay, I think that's it with future questions. And I got a few miscellaneous questions here, and then that'll sort of wrap me up. 38 minutes. I was trying to be quicker than that. Okay, a few more miscellaneous here, and then I'm going to turn this over to Otto. Concerning Luke and Eric, I'm not sure if it's legally feasible, but what do you think about deactivating Luke and Eric's nests? Well, I don't know their nests. All I know are wallet addresses and the value of that wallet in terms of ROI. So if you assume that they're positive wallets, they're going to be last on the list to get any money. I can't turn them off. I can just not pay a positive wallet, for example. Okay, another miscellaneous question. Concerning Luke and Eric again, I think they should have their access reviewed. So in other words, not have them on Discord. I said this early on. I think Otto said the same thing. They're nest holders today. That's all they are. And as long as they follow the rules of Discord that we've established, they're free to come in and chat and do whatever they want to do. Okay, that was another one about Luke and Eric in Discord. And I agree. This person said it would not be best to keep them out because of the emotions that happen when they come in. And I go, yeah, I agree. When they do come in, they fire up the crowd. everybody becomes a little more emotional. I think that's true today, but I think in a year from now, that's even less, right? It's just, it is what it is. I think it'll mitigate over time. And then the last question that we have on miscellaneous was regarding concerning the DeFi Shark thing that I posted. I think actually DeFi posted it before me months ago. So yes, it accounts for compounding. Balances are vetted. I vetted my balances. Horrible experience. My lead dev did it as well, and a couple other people that I talked to did the same thing. All sort of came in with the, yeah, it's in the ballpark. I don't like looking at that number. So I'm going to say it's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but if you have issues, definitely reach out. You can post it here as a question. We'll get it over to DeFi, or you can go right to DeFi directly. I've talked to him as well. So again, it's just it was a pretty neat tool. I thought I'd share with everybody. And I guess to sort of follow up on how this works, I also have a spreadsheet that was given to me by one of our members that detailed all 8,400 wallets. And I was able to find my wallets in there and vet it against the DeFi Shark and came up with very similar numbers. All right, that is 41 minutes down. I am finished. Otto, you're up.
Okay. All right, everybody. So this is the portion where we can bring people up on the stage. All you got to do is raise your hand. Now I have opened that up where if you click on the main stage tab, you should see a little icon that has a hand raising. And you can click that icon and it should flag to me that you have your hand up, and that way I could see who that is and bring you up here on the stage to speak and ask questions. Let's see, so far I don't have any requests. Is anybody having any issues with that, or do we have 0 questions at all? Look at the chat real quick. See if oh, it looks like some people have raised their hands. Okay, so we got a couple appearing in here. It does look like it's working. I think some people may have tested it to put their hand up and then their hand went down again. Alright, so far we have 2 people here with the hands up. I am going to bring up XRP Snoopy first. So when I invite you up to speak, I believe you have to click something on your end. I've honestly never accepted that, so it looks like he did come up here. And you just have to unmute your mic. Should be able to hear you. Go ahead, Snoopy, if talk. Oh, I can't hear you yet, though. Sometimes Discord has a bug, or you might have to actually go into your audio settings to see if it's using a different mic. I can kick you back down to the audience if you want to raise your hand again, or I can keep you here, but I'll just put you on mute for now, and we'll come back to you in a little bit, and then we can see if you have your mic working. So I'm going to bring up Rare. Looks like he's on his phone, so hopefully that works too for his mic. Rare. I don't know what it looks like on mobile, but you'll have to hit. There it goes. Looks like you're up here. Now you just have to come
All
off
right,
mute.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we put in about 15,000 into our, getting nests, right? And we never made it to wallet. I think I only have 12 nests. So basically what I'm hearing is that um if we came in that first group, I don't ever check into this. It's probably been about a month and a half since I've looked at this. So since we came in the beginning, there's absolutely no benefit for us. There's nothing that we're going to receive out of this anymore because now the focus is on something entirely different. Like I don't understand where like our $15,000, being initial nest holders, where did all that go? Why does that count for nothing now? Why am I just pushed to the side when I came in and was accused of having fear, uncertainty, and doubt and being a fudder in the beginning? because I had questions that no one could answer. All I wanted to know was what was making, the fire, what was, creating the value of the fire. No one could answer the question. They said, just trust what we're doing. So where does that put me and my family with the $15,000 that we definitely didn't see come back?
Okay, thanks for coming up and asking that question. So this goes back maybe to the first thing I was talking about, right? The majority of, well, the $86 million, this is how I'm interpreting it. The $86 million that all the negative wallets have spent, 57 of it went to the positive wallets. The delta went to the company. The company then spent that, let's do simple math, 30 million. 10% of that went into these investments. The rest, I don't know, right? I don't know where it went. So
Yeah.
specifically for your 15,000, the majority of it went to the positive wallets, right? Because when you bought your Nest, the majority of the fire went to the rewards pool that then went to the people who cashed out.
Yep.
So that's the Ponzi-nomics that I knew going in, that I just assumed this thing would convert over at some point and be more sustainable. I just didn't realize the math was worse than I thought. And when Marcus took over as CFO or CEO, right, and when he called it a mess. So today, if you know your wallet address and you use the DeFi Sharks tool, you can see your ROI percentage. So let's assume you've never taken money out. So then you'd be lost 15,000. You'd be, let's say you're negative 100% ROI. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there?
Yep.
You understand that?
Um,
So at some point in the future, if we're able to get dollars coming into this thing that we can share, then that you would participate in that drop.
Looks like she got disconnected from the main channel. If that answers your question, Rare, I can always bring you back up to make a last comment, but you'd have to raise your hand again. Back up. Oh, looks like I gotcha. Just bringing Rare back up here. Okay, did you catch that last bit, or did it disconnect you or something on your mobile device?
Yeah, she must not be able to.
All right, I'll bring her back down to the audience for now. If something gets fixed up, you can always try to raise your hand again. I did unmute Snoopy. If you can try to talk again, did you get your mic sorted out? So just to unmute, you'd have to unmute yourself. See if we can hear. Sometimes there used to be an old bug where you have to close and back in your Discord if it didn't work. Alright, well, looks like he's back in the audience. I did just invite up Ateeks. Sorry if I say that wrong. TTEE.
Hi guys. Hi Otto, can you hear me?
Yep, here, loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for getting this update session being arranged. Like, we were seriously in complete darkness as to what was the future for this particular venture, if you may call it. Dan, there is one particular question which I would like to ask. That is around, like, I've heard you saying that that you have no obligation towards the Nest holder. Is that with respect to any past obligations? Like, if there is no obligation, why would you pay the Nest holders in the future? So I just want to understand, so as to bifurcate, if you were referring to any existing or past obligations, and when it comes to paying the Nest holders from the future revenues that would be generated. So yes, you would have an obligation for the future profit that the project would be generating. So if you can just clarify that a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. You're correct. I have no obligation legally to Nest holders, right? Nest holders, I bought assets from a company.
So it came with no obligations. This is what's done in the business world. These are asset sales. I went in and purchased assets. But if my intent all along when I was talking to Luke and Eric was to buy these assets for myself, I would not be here talking to everyone today, right? My pitch the entire time was, let me take this thing over. You guys clearly want to go do something else. I'll buy these assets. You guys keep the ones that you want, and I'll try to grow this thing. And then if we can get to a sizable company, then we should be spinning off quite a bit of cash. At that point, we can do drops. How much we do today, how much we do in the future, that's what we're going to have to work out over time. But right now, there's just not enough assets to have a meaningful conversation, right? Because it's $2.5 million. And if you get to the idea of, let's say 90% of the cash that we generate next year goes to the investors. The problem with that is you don't get the compounding effect. So you're going to do this for 20 years. So you have to take dollars that come in and compound. You have to get what we call assets under management to be sizable, to where the percentage of send out is a much smaller percentage than the assets that you control. At that point, this becomes a sustainable model. So I guess the
That's
answer to the question
understandable.
is no obligation, but that's why I'm here. I've told everybody all along, this is just something I think I have to do. We all got a terrible situation here. I'm going to try to fix it, do the best I can. But from a legal standpoint, I can't get into any of that today on obligations.
Understood. And then I heard that you said that moving forward, there will be an attempt to provide an update on a quarterly basis. So just a question around that, just from a transparency perspective, would the Nest holders be privy to exactly what are the financials for the projects that you have undertaken, so that I understand that you would be compounding the profits from those projects, but just from a transparency perspective, that at least the Nest holders do have a line of sight as to what profits are being generated?
Yeah, that's a good question. In my world, that's what I would do. But I have to get with, obviously, I need to work with Shake, Murray, and Scott. But that would be my ideal goal. Would be that, let's say, my entity has a set of consolidated financials, and the community that's participating would get my quarterly report.
All right, thank you.
I think that
Now, that doesn't mean, and just to cap that doesn't mean, okay, if great news happens tomorrow, well, my quarterly event is not for another, 75 days. I would go into Discord and post something similar that, hey, here's what just happened. This is great news. It's just when you get into, like, let's say financial reporting, it's in this situation, I think quarterly financial reporting works for me the best given what's going on. Once we get to something sizable, I think we could go to monthly.
All right, got William up here. I unmuted you. I had you unmute originally.
Okay. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Very well. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So I just wanted to give Dan the opportunity to clarify to the community those who accuse him of, to some extent, conniving with Luke and Eric, because from what I understand, Luke and Eric probably got some money from this transaction, but they also, for lack of better words, misuse community funds. So they should not be benefiting from the pain and all the losses. So by buying these assets and not legally having any obligation to the community, the point or some of the accusation is, yeah, you pay the money, and we, the community members who invested, don't have any right anymore. So you basically bail them out. What do you say to people who make this kind of comments?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough spot. Luke and Eric did not give it to me. I had to agree to a price. For the community, this is ultimately where I go back to when I am a nest holder. I'm a very large nest holder. I did not, once I saw what the documents were, I realized that all I owned was a nest and it was only obligated to get rewards and fire. There was no legal tie on the cap table of the balance sheet of PCC to nest holders. That's ultimately where the breakdown came with me, was I'm a nest holder, PCC does not owe me anything. Even though I want them to, even though what they said in a Discord on a piece of paper with a balance sheet with assets, liabilities, and contracts, it wasn't there. That's ultimately why I started getting more involved, and ultimately where we're at today. It's, I wanted a path that says, okay, I want to get control of this thing to where I can decide how we figure out how to help these nest holders, because the tokenomics model is just not going to work. And, you know, the people that don't like what I want to do, that's what I mentioned earlier. I'm going to give you an exit, right? That's that NFT play that lets you walk away. You can sell your, let's say, right to, if I ever do a drop, that will go to that NFT. Because not everybody's going to like this long plan to build this thing back up. I just don't know any other way to take $2.5 million spread into a few startups and spin it up to $90 million without a lot of work and a lot of years.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Dan and Otto.
Thank you. You down? I'm gonna unmute Vendov here. All right, go ahead, sir.
Hey, Otto, can you hear me?
Yep, just fine.
Yeah. Hi, Otto. Hi, Dan. Thanks for today. Just a really simple question. So you've got round 1 and round 2 nests. Do we still have round 1 and round 2, or as far as return on investment goes, and Dan, you're concentrating on that, how are you going to deal with round 2 as opposed with round 1? So are there going to be different investments for round 2 still?
Yeah, that's a good question, Randolph. So right now I'm taking more of the macro approach. So I'm looking at the size of this elephant, right? $86 million. And I can break that down 10,000 ways by ROI, person who lost the most, you know, round 1, round 2, who bought an NFT, who bought a bunch of NFTs, who's a GMT, right?
Yep.
And I haven't really figured out how I want to prioritize that. So, you know, the easiest math in my mind was, let's look at the ones with the negative, who's the most in pain. And the most in pain would be the negative, the worst ROI. And that would be your negative 100% first. Now, you know, today that's what I'm thinking, right? But like I said, I don't think we get into any drop situation until maybe this time next year with some great success with these 3 startups. And over the next year, you know, we can sort of craft what makes the most sense. It's just, that's what I'm thinking today. But, you know, 6 months from now, it could make more sense to maybe we take the negative ROIs that are round 1 first because they were the first in, you know, something like that. These are just ideas I'm kicking out. We still have to work through this.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna unmute you here, Torrance. Welcome.
Hey, can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Again,
Good. Yeah, I just was hoping you guys could kind of clarify a little bit. I got to the AMA a little bit late. Was excited to see it was even happening, but so you guys were talking about how Eric and Luke chose to keep some of PCC's assets. What assets did they choose to keep? You probably covered it in the AMA.
yeah, right in the beginning there a little bit. So, I mean, I did not know all of the assets of PCC. So I did know that Spectrum was part of it. There was NIFI, and then there was these projects in Thailand that Eric was talking about. I just did not want to acquire any of those. So they stay or remain
So
for
you,
the the PCC, the old PCC US company. Oh, that's another, I remind you, I did not talk about this. Sorry, I forgot about this. Part of one of these assets I did acquire was the Dubai entity. So we're all on the same page. That was a shell corporation. In other words, all of the processes went through to create a Dubai entity. And I've spoken with the attorney in Dubai many times, and it's essentially a shell. So I have that as well. I have to perfect it. And this was something I was considering if we went back to a token model or something that we would use the Dubai entity. It's got better regulation, that type of stuff for the crypto space. So that was also included in the asset sale. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier.
Got you. So you actually chose not to purchase Spectrum.
That's correct. I mean, I could have asked for it. That just was not part of my, it goes back to one of the things I mentioned earlier. I just was not that interested in an NFT marketplace, given what's out there
Gotcha.
already.
Well, I just want to thank you for trying to help the community. Someone had to step up, and it sounds like, you know, you're the right guy, man. Thank you for, on everybody's behalf, for the effort.
Yeah, you're welcome. We've got a long way to go. There's no doubt.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Torrance. All right, I unmuted you, Crypto Mind Tricks. You want to go ahead and talk?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sure can.
So I guess I'll just start by saying, you know, Dan, I appreciate your efforts. It's a tough situation for all involved. There are some things that are, you know, pretty shocking, and it's hard to believe that they accumulated close to $90 million through this project, and then basically escaped on a golden parachute with, I'm sure, millions of dollars, but also in an asset sale to you. So I know there's a lot of frustration in the community, myself included. So I guess I just wanted to say I respect the fact that you are making an effort, probably just because you have strong moral character. Clearly, you have no legal obligation to do anything for anybody other than the, you know, acquisition of assets, as you said. But I appreciate you putting some effort in. I've completely written off any and all investment into this project and had for quite some time. But nonetheless, I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you. I hope everybody in this community, there are some great people in this community, can move on and find new ways to invest smarter and do better things. So anyway, thank you for your time, Dan. I do wish you the best regardless of outcome. Like I said, I don't have any expectations in terms of getting money back, but you know, I think if something was to ever work out, you seem like the mind for it. So anyhow, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna unmute you here. We got Nick23.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So I didn't even realize that we were even having AMAs anymore. I thought this was just a complete rug. I just have a question. I tried logging on not too long ago just to see like how much I've accumulated, and I noticed that my wallet isn't even appearing anymore. I'm sure you guys have answered this already, so forgive me for a repeated question, but will I have access to my wallet again?
You should have access to your wallet. What you probably don't have access to is the website where you can see your nest accumulating. So yeah, in the multiple discords here, but I did make some announcements where I paused the smart contract just because I did not like the tokenomics model. And I recently paused or turned off the website just because the information that was there was wrong. And to delete, I'd rather have nothing than have something posted wrong. So I went back to my dev and said, just pull it down. I'll go find somebody to build a website for me that's just sort of that venture capital play, which is what we're shooting for. So again, if you guys do not see the website, that's because I'm cheap. I turned it off. I'd rather have nothing than something still talking about tokenomics and DeFi and all this stuff.
Got it. Okay, so that explains why I'm not seeing it. My last question is, I mean, I'm sure like everyone that's on this call, I'm sure there was people on this that were round one investors. I myself was a round one investor. Is there any chance possible for a buyback at all, in case like I wanted to get out?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier for two reasons. One, if I give you an option to get out, then that you can take the tax loss. And again, you got to talk to your accountant to make sure that makes sense. But you have to be able to sell the thing you bought. And so the theory is if I convert your nest into an NFT, and there's a lot of legal crap that comes with that I got to work out, but then you could sell that and that's essentially you'd sell that on the open market.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, I did bring Rare back up because it looks like we've gone through a lot of the initial questions. I'm going to unmute you here.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're great.
Wow, it just seems like we got dumped by Luke and Eric, all of us round oneers, and I had no idea that the PCC page was shut down. Like I said, I just randomly, I don't know, checked, clicked on this little conversation. I don't know what you're going to do, Dan, but I hope that Luke and Eric know that they reap what they sow. And this was not at all something right for them to do. So it sounds like you're the cleanup crew. You're, I guess, picking up the pieces, trying to help people to get out of the mess that, we unfortunately have in our, hands. It's more like we have nothing. So
Well, I would
anyway,
say we have nothing, right? Today we have investments in 3 companies, and we have, a little bit of money in the treasury to help get these 3 over the finish line if they need it, or we can deploy that somewhere else. So, I mean, that's really where
just shame on
logically,
them.
I was gonna
Sorry
say,
for you, Dan.
I was gonna say, logically, I should walk away, right? That's what I should have done, but it just did not sit right with me. I like these investments, and there's a little bit of dollars here. That's when I made the play with Luke and Eric. I'm like, look, I think there's a shot. It's going to be a long shot, but there's a shot, and they agreed. So they've at least recognized it needs to go to somebody else.
So as far as updates, since the page is down, is everything's updating to this Discord? Like, for me to find out that the page was down, and I've never even checked to see about airdrops or anything like that. And I know that nothing is happening anytime soon. And even if it did, it sounded like it wouldn't be anything anyway. So all the updates are going to be on Discord, correct?
That's correct. For now, that's where I'm going to keep it. And again, like I said, I'm going to get some type of website back up and running that talks about the venture capital play, sort of has what we call the tombstones of here's the places we've placed our capital, that type of stuff, as we move to that next level. But today it's just get rid of all the stuff that's not right, focus on the Discord, make sure this is where I'm communicating with everybody. And then, like I've said a number of times, right, help the guys we've already invested in.
So basically, with all the round one nesters, you're going to give us an opportunity to get out with NFT or something like that, which I don't even understand. But like, we've been dumped, right? So there's nothing, you don't owe us anything, and we're somewhere out there just kind of floating around, correct?
Fortunately, that's the conclusion I came to months ago.
So, and that's because Luke and Eric signed some kind of a document that dumped us.
Well, again, I'm not the old PCC lawyer. I've talked to him a number of times. The nests were only obligated to get rewards in FIRE. They were not tied to the assets of the old PCC.
Okay, so FIRE is probably at 0, I'm guessing. Is it non-existent?
Last I checked,
19
it was
cents.
roughly 20 cents.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Dan. Well, God bless you. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, looks like I brought Snoopy back up here. I'm going to unmute you here. Looks like we lost another guy off the stage.
Can you? Yep. Okay. Looks like you guys can hear me now, right?
Yes, can hear you finally.
Sorry about that. That sucked. Yeah, you're right. I had to exit out of Discord and come back in. So.
Glad it worked.
Anyways, Dan, I appreciate, just like everybody else has said here, you know, I appreciate at least somebody here picking up the mantle and, you know, and, or picking up the flag and carrying us forward. Just a couple questions. I think you probably answered this. I came in a little bit late, but, so we had about $500,000 in the treasury just before everything kind of fell apart. And I'm assuming that's still there somewhere.
It's actually $595,000 as of this morning.
Exclamation point treasury if you want to see that.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. And the just a couple of random comments. I know other people are talking about, oh yeah, would we invest in Zeta or would we invest in some other sort of crypto or whatever? And I think at this, just my opinion, you know, and I obviously don't speak for everybody else, but I think that, Combat Waffle Studios has done an amazing job with the game that they've developed. And I think that, if it is successful, and I think it will be, we may want to consider investing in like another round of a game or something that they develop. It may be worth.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was part of the conversation I had with Scott when I met with him a week ago. It's, I like the fire you've got. How do we pour a little more gas on this thing and get you to grow faster? And, him and I are talking through that now. Whether or not that comes to fruition, I don't know, but definitely you're seeing it. He's got a legit game coming to market.
Great. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you. All right, it looks like we have no hands up, but I did see, I was typing in chat just a second ago, I saw people that popped in here for a little bit and then popped out, but looks like we do have somebody. Bring it up, Strong Ape. And I don't know how much longer you wanted to go, Dan, but we currently have 0 people in the queue, so if you wanted to see if anybody else wanted to get up here,
yeah, we'll give it a few more minutes. Don't be shy. Now's your time.
Yeah, come on up, get in the queue. I'll bring you up here. All right, welcome. We can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, just on a personal level, Dan, I just wanted to know what you think about the whole situation, because you've said that 57 million profit went to about 1,000 wallets. How many of those wallets do we know are just friends and family of Luke and Eric and just people that they've siphoned the money out? Because they had that event at the Tate Club. Everyone there seemed to be a friend of Luke and Eric. Everyone there they seemed to hire seemed to be a friend of Luke and Eric. So it all sounds like a massive scam. It sounds like an unregistered security sale and then a huge scam. So just what do you think about that? Because you sound like a morally good guy. So do you think Luke and Eric are bad people? Do you think they've stolen the money? Do you think they've had this intent from day one? What do you think really happened?
It's a good question, man. I've wrestled with that I don't know how many times. Ultimately, I think it was the intent was not a scam, right? This was a way to pull in capital fairly quickly, although not efficient, right? Because 70% of it went to the other people, right? They only got 3 of the fire. The other 7 went to the other people. But the growth was tremendous. The people they were hiring, there's a lot of good people they hired. It's just that ultimately it went bust in my mind. And that's when I learned that while I was trying to help, right? That's when I said, I go back to this comment I made earlier. If I sit here and watch, this thing is going to go and crash into the ground. At least if we could do this deal today, we could salvage some of the money in the treasury and help in any way I can get these 3 guys with their ventures to a successful level, to the point where there's some cash coming back. So the 1,000 wallets, man, I don't know. I looked at it and just couldn't believe that many wallets, but that's probably how these type of tokenomics things work, right? It's the first in, and it's the small minority get the returns. And me and the other 7,400 or 7,399 wallets, well, actually I have more than one, but I have several wallets, but we all paid the price. And that's why I'm here to try to fix it.
Fair enough. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I personally think it was probably a whole fabricated scam from day one, really, because, you know, I guarantee all of their friends and family would have had wallets full of 100 nests and things like that, and you know, I'm sure they're all off with a lot of money right now. So, yeah, it is what it is. Thanks a lot for what you're doing. I think it was a good comment someone made earlier about, you know, maybe making a community board, because there's a lot of smart people in the chats. I know, like, me and a friend of mine were reaching out to Luke and Eric a lot to see if we could help with anything, just like you did as well. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, there's a lot of smart people in the Discord that are willing to help as well. So yeah, God bless, man.
Thank you. And you're right. The community, that's part of, you know, what I like about this is there's a lot of smart folks here in this community. So once we get some success, this, you know, I could see this being where we have a list of people we could invest in and we have funds to do it. So that's ultimately the long-term plan.
Looks like I brought Atik's back up here. You had another question for us?
Yes, I do have another question. Sorry, Dan, to bother you with some more questions. I just want to understand, just to get an opinion from you. Like you said that with respect to the positive ROI nests, which were primarily Luke and Eric, they cashed out on the fire tokens, which we bought by creating our nest. But what do you think? Like, they are also running businesses now. Luke is running Spectrum. Eric is setting up his business in Thailand, and all those businesses were paid out of the capital that we nest holders paid. Don't you think they have a moral liability or an obligation to pay back to what they earn out of those projects? Like, I understand you haven't got you have not purchased all the projects what the old PCC held, but now there are projects which are being run by these guys. But I hope I've kind of tried to kind of get the question across. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand. It's, yes, they have the PCC, the old PCC has assets. What Luke and Eric are doing with those, I do not know, right? That's whether they have obligations to you guys, me too, right? I'm still a nest holder. I think that's all legit. That it's what are they trying to do? I came in and said, I'll take these assets and I'm going to try to grow them this way. They agreed. They kept a portion of them. So what they plan to do, I don't know.
No, but as you said that, like, you don't have a legal obligation, but morally you are trying to do something to pay back the nest holders.
Correct.
Isn't it something that they should be doing as well?
I would think they would want to do that, but it's back to the way this thing works, man. I can't, right? I can't make them do anything. I can only control what I can control, right? And that's today. I'm happy.
That. No, I get it. It's just the frustration. Like, as you said, I'm also a very large nest holder, and it's like hundreds and thousands of dollars that I've lost in this project. So it's just that frustration that kicks in. So
yeah, I went through the frustration phase, and then I said it came down to I got to go left or right now, right? I give up, or do I double down and try to put in effort now and make this a go? And I'm choosing the latter.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Looks like we don't have any more hands up, so I don't know if you want to wrap this up, Dan, or give it another minute if you still feel like answering any other questions.
No, if you've got no more, I think we can move to wrap up our first AMA, Otto.
Okay, well, actually, as I said, that Eyes Wide Open just flagged, so we could take him as the final person up here, just because he got in right when I was saying that. So if you want to just answer his questions real quick, then we can wrap it up.
Sure.
close those hand requests.
Hello, how you doing, Dan?
Doing well, thank you.
That's good. That's good. Look, I've just come in at the tail end of your AMA, and I've been a long-standing nest holder. I've been in it since the start, pretty much. I'm interested to get your perspective on whether or not you feel that you've been scammed by the founders and shortchanged.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I wasn't getting that.
Yeah, do you feel that you've been scammed by the founders with respect to being a nest holder and shortchanged with respect to what your expectations were on the project at the outset?
No, because I bought and I knew this was a very risky play.
Okay. So
Ultimately, that's just ultimately where it was. I knew this was a risky play.
So you're comfortable with the way that they've conducted their affairs?
I didn't say that, right? I knew
Okay,
this
well
was a
that's
risky.
that's the next question.
Right. I knew this was a risky play. It didn't go well. I think there were many mistakes made. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it perfect. It's just, it's business. This did not go well. So I'm going to try to do something different.
Okay. So what's happening with the nests then in terms of being able to claim and use those? Has that all been covered in the AMA today?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier and we made some announcements. So I have paused the contract. So there's no nest activity today.
Yeah, I noticed that. So what's the plans moving forward in terms of nest holders?
I don't know that completely in terms of if I'm going to turn on a smart contract in the future or not. I did mention that, I talked earlier about here's where I want to go with the company. For those of you that do not like the path I'm on, I'm going to figure out a way to give you an exit ramp to where you could convert your nest over to something that's sellable like an NFT, and then you can exit. And from a couple people that were chiming in, that would create a tax loss for them so they could at least write this off.
Yep. And what's the score with the NFTs that have been purchased that have offered absolutely no value?
I don't know that, right? But selling an NFT today for what we have is probably a low number.
Of course, given the market conditions, but the whole point of the NFT was to obtain some benefit in the project. Is that something that you're likely to continue with, or you just don't know?
Yeah, because if and again, this is all got to be worked out legally yet, but if we convert nests over to an NFT and there's drops in the future, it would go to that NFT.
Yep. Sorry, just so I'm clear, I'm talking about the NFTs that were purchased beyond that of the nests.
Grandmaster and Master NFTs, you mean?
The Grandmaster. Yeah, that goes back to, again, some of the earlier conversations where right now I'm just looking at the $80-some million hole, and I'm looking at different ways of segmenting that. And the priority in my mind was the ones that had the most pain. So the negative 100% ROIs would take my focus. That doesn't mean I'll stay there, because maybe there's round one negative 100% or round one GMTs, for example, that are negative 100%. See, there's, I guess, once we get some money in the future, it's going to be a lot easier to figure out how to hand it out than today, right? When it's a mountain we've got to climb and we're at the bottom. So all of that stuff, I guess, would be discussed in Discord over time of this makes the most sense going forward today. And obviously with a smart community, we're going to learn the better ways as we go forward.
So just finally then, how are you planning to fund all this?
Right now, what I assumed is it was going to cost, I'm going to fund it for the first year. So paying the devs, paying Otto, that's what I assumed would happen. And by the end of next year,
I would like to be at a spot where there's enough cash coming off or cash coming in from the swapsicle volume or something like that, to where at least to keep the lights on, it's self-sustaining. And then from there, we'll see where we go.
It all sounds like a long shot to me, but I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. That's the last of the people coming up. I guess we were interrupted before when you were maybe doing some closing statements. But any last thoughts or words?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending today. I know it's not the answers you all wanted to hear, but I think I've got a plan. It's going to take a lot of time, and I'll communicate as best I can as we go forward with any new updates. Thank you, Otto. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.